All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to the last of 2021 monthly FPCI EU Ambassador Lecture in cooperations with the delegations of the European Union to Indonesia. My name is Ray, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Good morning, everybody. Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia has the pleasure to once again conduct this lecture series throughout 2021. And today we have here with us His Excellency Ambassador Vincent Piquet, Ambassador of the European Union to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam. Welcome, Ambassador. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm very well, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Yes. Today we are joined by students from FPCI chapters university across Indonesia. We would like to welcome everybody and also thank you to our participants who are tuning in our YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, this Ambassador Lecture Series aims to discuss various aspects of the bilateral relations between Indonesia and the European Union. It is also a platform for university students to engage and have an extensive discussions with the Ambassador of the European Union on the most pressing international relations issues. And today we will have the European Union 2021 recap as well as 2022 outlook from the Ambassador himself. But before we start, I would like to remind everyone, don't forget to share your moments with us from this Ambassador Lecture Series by tagging us at FPC and at uni_Eropa on your social media posts. Once again, don't forget to tag us at FPC and at uni_Eropa on your social media posts. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us now begin today's discussions. His Excellency, the screen is yours.
Good. Thanks very much, Ray, for the floor, and thanks to everybody in the FPCI team for inviting me once again to this opportunity to have some dialogue with the FPCI community, some members of it, about Indonesia, about foreign policy, about Indonesia, Uni Eropa. So it's late in the year 2021. Everybody is winding up, beginning to at least, and so it's a good moment to look back on what you've done and what is coming up for the next year. Things that went well, things that should have gone better, etc. So a little bit of evaluation and looking back, and in order to better orient oneself for the future. And great to do so with FPCI, our very highly appreciated partners in Indonesia, the FPCI team. And I think I heard in the background Pak Dino Patidjalal also present, and warm greeting to him. Very briefly, the European Union, where do we stand? Today, as a matter of fact, today and tomorrow, there is the concluding meeting of the EU heads of state, heads of government taking place in Brussels. There are 4 such meetings per year, and where the EU leaders give guidance to the work ahead and take political decisions. Important meeting. Of course, first of all, on the agenda is COVID. Secondly, there is going to be a discussion about energy and energy policy. In the backdrop, of course, the result of the COP26 in Glasgow in November. Thirdly, almost always there is a very sizable foreign policy agenda. And here, of course, the big topics at the moment for the EU, on the one hand, related to our neighborhood, the countries close to us, around us, on the east, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and on the southeast, in the Middle East, in the in West Asia, so to say, Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan. And on the south, of course, we have major sources of insecurity also in Africa, in countries like Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. So all in all, quite an agenda for the European Council to consider in less than a day and a half. COVID. Two observations. I think on the whole, the EU has done reasonably well in rolling out its COVID approach with a successful vaccination campaign. More than 70% of the population, adult population, vaccinated. More than 1.4 billion vaccines exported or donated to third countries, including Indonesia. We have exported and donated more than we used ourselves, and which makes us the biggest donor of vaccines in the world. We had a good European summer. Cases were low. People could resume their lives at home, but also by taking holidays across Europe. I enjoyed it myself. Nevertheless, now we have quite a different picture once again, with a very strong fourth wave in the majority of member states, linked to the Delta variant. How long will it last? Impossible to predict. Some member states the numbers are still rising. In a few, we seem to have reached the peak, and might be a very slow, gradual decline again taking shape. What does it show? That clearly vaccination has to be pursued, because in many respects, currently we see a peak among unvaccinated persons. Secondly, vaccination is not enough. There is going to continue to be a need for medical, social restrictions in public life, in public transport, in public spaces, the restaurants, the cafes, the bars, etc. So we were maybe a little bit fast reopening up, and we are in a sense paying for it now. Externally, we will continue our work to help vaccinate third countries. Right now, as you may know, around 40% of the world population has been vaccinated. That is not a bad number, but it's very uneven, an average that masks an uneven distribution of vaccines. And in Africa, in the least developed countries, the poorest countries, the vaccination levels are sometimes below 10%. So that is very uneven, and that's bad from a medical point of view. And it is, of course, bad from a moral point of view, from the point of view of the need of the rich world to help the poor countries. So that is our task for the coming half year. Bring the 40% average to 70% globally, and with a particular focus of vaccinating the poor countries. EU has put 1 billion euros on the table just for Africa, a massive amount of money for vaccines, and also for vaccine production, because that is also one important thing that we need to help the poorer world, the poorer countries, to build up a vaccine capacity of their own. That's on the pandemic side. Economically, we're doing pretty well in the EU. We've seen a very strong rebound across the EU, including in the Eurozone, a rebound that is stronger than in the UK, than in the US even. And so that's good. It is still fragile in the face of the new peak we're seeing. And of course, for the EU's recovery to be sustainable, we must make sure that we get the pandemic under control. Weeding it out completely is going to be impossible for the foreseeable future, but at least finding a manageable level of cases that do not in themselves impact the society and the economy as a whole. Our economic recovery package is working. I see that announcements day after day, new activities, new projects, new investments being rolled out across the member states, not just the big ones, but also the small ones, not just the richest ones, but also the least advantaged member states. So a good job on the whole, and we have to pursue this very, very strongly. Second point I wanted to mention is the climate crisis. We've always said, and I've said it too, in this lecture series, that we have two crises at the moment, COVID and climate at the same time. So, and we have indeed also made progress on our response to the climate crisis. First of all, in the big meeting in Glasgow, the COP, the Conference of Parties, 190 or so countries represented, including Indonesia, including the EU countries and the EU. Reasonable result. On the whole, much to be satisfied about. Two big topics still unresolved, or not fully resolved, and on that require an answer next year, at the next year's COP in Cairo, Egypt. And that is, more commitments are needed from countries to cut greenhouse gas emissions, because with the commitments as they have been made now, we will not bring global warming below 2 degrees centigrade. So, and below, unless we bring it below 2 degrees, we are in for a climate disaster for the entire world. Unescapable. So that is a major, major task still ahead. Secondly, finance. A lot of discussions about that with the poorer countries calling for the richer countries to do more. And that's a legitimate call. So we have to bring the level of finance for the developing countries up to enable them to make the climate, the energy transition that the world and they need. We need it for the climate, but also we need it for enabling the poor countries to pursue their development path, to realize their income growth objectives for their population, to reduce poverty. And of course, the least developed countries take a front row in that. But also, if you look at Indonesia, an emerging economy with a tremendous growth drive still to pursue up to 2045, Indonesia is also an important partner in that connection. So those are the two big ticket events, COVID and climate, that where the EU has played a role globally, and where we have also done tremendous work domestically inside Europe. Because in Europe, as you may have followed somewhat, we are rolling out this massive Green Deal, as we call it, the European Green Deal, to make our economy, our society, carbon neutral, net zero by the year 2050, 50. And we have intermediary target before that 2050 goal, and that target is for 2030, and that is linked to the climate Paris Accord of a couple of years ago, and that target is minus 55% now of cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. You don't do that overnight. This takes time. This takes lots of individual measures to realize that, and on which we're now working domestically, and also with partners abroad in topics like the forest, the coal transition, the transport sector, maritime, aviation, construction, industry, of course, and agriculture, very important emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So that's a lot of work at home, but also, as I said, with our partners, because some of these measures have an external dimension. Europe is not an island, nobody is an island if it comes to climate. So we have to engage our partners abroad to explain what we're doing and to help them align their trade policies and their investment policies towards the EU with our new climate rules. So that's a big debate still ahead, also with Indonesia. Lastly, Europe in the world, big topic, and maybe I turn a little bit to the foreign policy side then. This was a tough year, without a doubt. Why? First of all, if you look at our neighborhood, I've mentioned the countries, East, and Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, unstable and problematic situations in different ways. And with, of course, Belarus being an extreme case, the last tyranny in Europe, as we call it, and using migrants, abusing human beings for warfare against Europe. That's how I summarize it. Absolutely immoral. And fortunately, we managed to, with the cooperation of sending countries, to bring this under control. But the problem of Belarus remains, evidently, and it is not resolved. Ukraine, one of the countries that will be discussed by the EU leaders today and tomorrow. We stick by what we have always said, that Ukraine's integrity, territorial integrity, has to be restored, peaceful manner, and that we call on the Russian Federation to do so, to help us do so, and to stop destabilizing the situation in Ukraine. So worry about military buildup. Russia, very sensitive, potentially dangerous, so a source of great concern for us. On the southeast, Iran continues to be a very important question mark. Not Iran in itself, but the nuclear ambitions of Iran, not nuclear energy, but of course nuclear weapons. And that the US has rejoined the talks with Iran about the control of the nuclear sector of the country. And we these talks have been difficult, very slow, and so far, I'm afraid, not led to the progress we want and need. So that is a big question mark still ahead to be resolved in the next year. Then the other big crisis, of course, Afghanistan. I've had the pleasure of discussing Afghanistan with you a couple of months ago. And I won't repeat that, but summarize it that, first of all, we see a Taliban regime that fails to live up to its promises of establishing something of an inclusive government in Afghanistan. There are UN reports about human rights abuses, about summary executions of people. Position of women is bad. They've been sidelined. And there is a massive economic, financial crisis, and human crisis, humanitarian crisis. So the scenario that we discussed in, I believe it was in October, is materializing, that as external partner, as EU, as Indonesia, as US, we will have to see how we can help the people of Afghanistan without endorsing the Taliban regime in its present shape. So that is a task, critical one, urgent one, that we need to resolve in the coming months. The situation is dire. Libya, on the southern shore of the Mediterranean, couple of 100 kilometers away by sea from Italy, for instance, also Spain, not too far away. Country that got out of a civil war very, very gradually, painfully slow and painful. That was about to stabilize and hold elections in order to bring in a government that has democratic credibility. Key interest for us to make and help that work together with the UN, of course, and because without a stable Libya in the northern rim of Africa, and we will have a massive source of instability on our hands, and instability in military, political sense, but also in terms of migration. And you remember that in the years 2015, 2018, 19, there was massive irregular migration from transiting through Libya with desperate people coming from sub-Saharan Africa, trying to reach the European shores in little dinghy boats. So that is a very serious concern on the southern shore. There's a lot more I can say, but let me briefly turn to the more global picture. And that of course, has to do with a question that Indonesia is also answering for itself, the new relationship with US, Biden administration, and secondly, with the People's Republic of China. The rivalry between the two is there. Maybe the discourse is different than it was during the administration of President Trump, but the rivalry is still there. And of course, we have to position ourselves there as European Union about how we want to function globally without adding to the rivalry, and while preserving the strong partnership we have with the United States, it's evident, and also the partnership that we have in many areas with China. We have a huge trade relation with the country, 1.5 trillion euros worth of trade per year, roughly. That's an awful lot. And we have major cooperation with China on a global topic like the climate. So as EU, we have said we don't want to be squeezed in between. We don't want to be boxed. We want to have a self-standing policy towards Asia that is not exclusive from anybody towards anybody, nor is it the fifth wheel on anybody's wagon. We call it the Indo-Pacific strategy of the EU. We had talked about it in the course of this year. And in that strategy, we aim to strengthen and raise our profile in the Indo-Pacific. And we aim to engage all countries, without exception, with whom we can strike a cooperative relationship on certain topics based on common interests. Now, Indonesia here will be very prominent for us, and we will talk about it in a second. So that, I think, was the big new development on the global foreign policy side from the EU. I come to Indonesia. In the framework of this Indo-Pacific strategy, we can see already now that we are having more engagement with Indonesia than before. In the past year, we had two fantastic visits by top EU politicians. One was the High Representative for our Foreign and Security Policy, Josep Borrell. And the other was the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, who is in charge of the Green Deal for climate and creating our circular net zero economy. Frans Timmermans, he had a session with FPCI in the course of his visit. So effort clearly to from the EU side to step up our engagement, our relations with Indonesia, to bring them to a new level. We have good relations with Indonesia, but we can go further. We can do more together in strategic areas, and we can do it at a higher, involving more political level contacts. Our interests in Indonesia are only rising. It is linked to the rise of your country, and its development path, its role in the region, and its growing role in global affairs, G20, and ASEAN chairmanship next year. So we have every interest to create a stronger bond between Europe and Indonesia at the political level. Now, politics alone is not enough. You've got to underpin that with real stuff, with real work, with things that you produce for citizens. And here, the key things I should mention is, of course, first of all, our COVID support to Indonesia, vaccines that we donated either through the COVAX facility or bilaterally, about 40 million vaccines donated to Indonesia by the EU and the EU member states. And we've supported NGOs for helping vulnerable people. And we are working on a loan together with German Development Bank alone to two hospitals, one in East Java and one in South Sulawesi. So COVID has been a major effort. COVID support has been a major effort on the EU side to bring concrete benefits to your country, to your citizens during the past year. Secondly, trade. I've mentioned in the course of this year the fact that we are negotiating this big trade agreement between Indonesia and us. We call it the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA. Negotiations were hindered by COVID, of course, slowed down. It's a pity, but there's no two ways around it. But we had a new round of talks in November, and it was good. Good atmospherics. People were glad to be seeing each other again virtually, and pick up where they had left off quite a while ago. So, and that good atmosphere translated in some concrete progress on closing some negotiation chapters. We're now planning the next one, next round, bit here in the hands, I should say, in the hands of the Indonesian government, because in a couple of areas of the negotiations we need an offer from Indonesia, and that's how it works. These negotiations, both sides put an offer on the table, and then you negotiate. Now, in a couple of areas, we are waiting for such an offer, and of course, in the absence of it, we can't yet schedule the next round. So I think, but I'm confident that this offer will be coming soon, and so that we can press ahead. President Jokowi says he wants to accelerate the talks, and he wants to produce a deal soon as possible. We are willing to do what we can to make that work from our side, and by pushing forward with the negotiations. Not from our side also, of course, not forget that we have still a number of very practical, smaller or larger trade barriers to resolve, barriers that our companies doing trading with Indonesia face, or when they invest here. The omnibus bill has not resolved everything, and on that. So that's still something very practical in agriculture and other sectors that we need to address with our Indonesian partner. Palm oil. It used to be the big bone of contention between Indonesia and us. And what to say about it? First of all, the issue was never about palm oil in general. It was about biofuel. Biofuel made of palm oil. Very important to bear that in mind. What's good is that we are treating this issue now in the WTO. Indonesia filed a suit against the EU, and okay, we may not like that, but at the end of the day, it's been a very useful process for not only for Indonesia but also for us to focus the minds and to focus the framework of where we have to resolve that dispute, so that elsewhere in other areas, apart from biofuels, we can continue to work normally together. So I think very good effect of this dispute, which we expect will be ruled by the WTO sometimes in the first quarter or latest second quarter of next year. We particularly needed this WTO procedure because we want to work together with Indonesia on sustainability of natural resources, commodities, everything. And that was blocked as a result of the palm oil dispute. But fortunately, I'm able to say, and I'm sure that the Indonesian side will agree, we've been able to unblock that cooperation, and we are now discussing with Indonesia, between us, cooperation in various fields, forest, and on timber, on carbon pricing, carbon costing, on renewable energy, things that matter for the climate and things that matter for your economy. Yesterday, I had a meeting with Coordinating Minister Luhut about that, him and his team, and there's lots of things that we can elaborate on that score. So, all in all, good news, unfinished business, of course, but that's life. But lots of things on our agenda for next year. The last topic is security, and that relates to the Indo-Pacific strategy. First of all, stress that this is the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy. It's not an offensive or military strategy at all. No, it's a cooperation strategy. It says so in the title. Cooperation, but the cooperation does involve military aspects, security, defense, and that I think is something that is very exciting for us. First of all, because at the end of the day, the military side of the EU is fairly new, and we are busy building it up quite successfully. And we are in that connection seeking new partnerships with with countries around the world, and in that Indonesia is one of them. And what do we hope to do in the coming year? Work together on training, on education topics between us and our training institute, military training institute, and the UNHAM, the Defense University. We want to work together with Indonesia on the EU peace missions and military missions that we have around the world. There's a good 18 of them in existence. One example is the Atalanta Navy mission in the Gulf of Aden off Somalia, fighting piracy. Now, that's a wonderful topic, I think, non-political, very important for both sides, because we both have an interest in keeping the trade routes safe and open. So these are some highlights of what I expect we will be working on in the next year. And besides that, of course, the very last point, G20, lead role for Indonesia at the global level in the coming year. Tough agenda ahead, difficult things are on the global agenda for the economy, in the financial sector, in tax matters, and the climate, in the pandemic, tough things. But we are ready to support Indonesia in all respects, in where we can. The EU as an entity in itself, but also the member states of the EU who are part of the G20 process, and there's 5 of them. So we are ready to work together with Indonesia, with the Indonesian presidency, to try and make sure that the Bali summit in October, 31st October next year, will be a great success. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ambassador Vincent Piquet, for the updates and also the forecast for the 2022. As we can hear from your presentations, it is a big year for the EU. You know, how to bounce back economically from the pandemic, how to vaccinate the global populations, especially, and there are still many problems that needs to be resolved in the following year. And I'm sure everyone here today has some questions. Now let's go ahead and dive into our questions and answer sessions. I will be taking some questions per batch, which will be then answered by Ambassador Piquet before we moving on to the next batch. So in this first sessions, I would like to invite all the students here at the Zoom meeting to ask your questions, and you may ask questions by using the raise hand feature on your Zoom apps, or you can also ask your questions through the chat box, which I will be delivering your questions. So to the students, would you like to ask some questions? And I would also like to encourage all the participants that are tuning in from our YouTube channel to also ask your questions as well, as we have already some questions there. Maybe while we wait, I would like to take some questions from the YouTube. We have here we have Satrio Santoso from Ateneo de Davao, Philippines. What are the main threats affecting EU this year, and what have been the highlights of challenges facing EU? So that is the first question, Ambassador. And the second one, we have Marcel from Surabaya. We have seen military build-ups and tensions in the border of Ukraine, as you have mentioned in your presentations earlier. Also, the fear of possible invasions of Ukraine. How will the EU respond if and only if the invasions of Ukraine happens? Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador.
All right, thanks for those questions. First of all, the question coming from the Philippines. Greetings, colleague in the Philippines. You know, I've touched on some of the main tracks of work in my talk already. Don't want to repeat that, but if you look at specifically the relations between EU and the Indo-Pacific, there's one very, apart from what I've already mentioned, one very interesting new enterprise that we will be rolling out in 2022. And that is what we call the Global Gateway. And this is a new investment initiative of the EU, a way to raise 300 billion euros of investment through blending of public money with grants, with loans from the development banks of the EU and from the EU member states, the European Investment Bank, for instance, the KfW from Germany, the ADF from France and others. And thirdly, private sector money. Now, so that is challenging, but we consider it vital to put this initiative in place to support green infrastructure in third countries, especially in Asia, public transport, energy, renewable energy, also investment in sustainable production in the forest, in the timber, for instance, and in digital matters, the digital economy. So all in all, a new investment initiative for the world, but with a focus, no doubt, on Asia. Now, very keen to roll that out in Indonesia, evidently, and the EU's ambassador in the Philippines will be doing exactly the same with you over there. So keep an eye on that. We will be making announcements of the rollout as we go along next year. The question from Marcel in Surabaya. What would be our response to an invasion by Russia into Ukraine? Now, first of all, as a diplomat, I, of course, would always say I'm not going to enter into hypothetical questions. Secondly, as a diplomat, you have to say something. So, as today, have a look at what comes out of the European Council meeting tomorrow. It's all publicly published on the website, and the European Council of 16, 17 December. And you will see what the EU member states, head of state, will be saying there. I think, first of all, what we're telling Russian leaders right now is that this is just not on. Any incursion is unacceptable, and the EU will defend and support Ukraine's territorial integrity, and we will take measures as needed in case something were to happen. So that is a little bit where we stand. The EU is not alone saying this. Many international parties have exactly said the same, including the United States, including NATO, of course. So just to indicate and highlight the importance and the gravity of this possible development. I stop there.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador, for your answers. And now I would like to encourage all the participants, all the students, to ask your questions in the Zoom meeting, and also all the participants in our YouTube channel. Okay, we have Yesiriana from, oh wait, do we have from, okay, we have questions from our Zoom meeting. Akmal from Universitas Jenderal Sudirman. Questions to Ambassador Vincent. One of the well-known media, The Economist, always provides a kind of prediction based on data about how the world economy will be in the next year. If I may ask, what do you think about the world's economy or geopolitics in 2022 on EU point of view? That is the first question, Ambassador. And next we have questions from Corny from FPCI Bakri in Jakarta. Good morning, Your Excellency Piket. I want to ask you about the commitments of EU to help Indonesia for COVID recovery. In your opinion, how long the EU will help Indonesia for COVID recovery? And due to we know all countries still struggling to save their own economy. Right. Thank you, Ambassador.
All right, thanks for those questions. And Akman from the Universitas Jenderal Sudirman, my forecast for the world 2020, that's a big one. But let's put it like this way. First of all, for the economy, of course, we very much going to look at how the COVID pandemic develops and whether we can bring it under control in the places where there's a peak now, particularly in Europe. And secondly, how fast we can progress on vaccinating the unvaccinated in the world, in our own countries, but particularly, as I mentioned, in the poorer countries of the world. So that is a key thing that we have to pursue in order to protect the economic recovery that we have seen in Europe very well, in the United States, in China, with some moderation possibly there, and also in Indonesia. We need growth to get back where it was, and in order to protect the incomes of our citizens. It's very simple. So will we succeed? I think so, but there are risks. Evidently, the Omicron variant is there. We don't know exactly how infectious it is, how sick it makes people, how our vaccines work. You read about it all day, every day at the moment, but the jury is still out on this, and the science still has to come to a conclusion. So that is a serious risk for everybody, because what is striking is that the Omicron virus variant has spread very, very fast and is multiplying. See multiple cases coming up in now more than 50 countries. So that's a lot. So that's a big risk ahead. We have to fight it where we can. World politics in 2022. I would say, start by saying that the risk in the eastern part of Europe, on Ukraine, is certainly a big topic. Secondly, the security considerations and the security implications of the rivalries we see in Asia, in the Pacific, I think is something that we need to watch very carefully, and as European Union be very alert to take the positions that we stand for, and we stand for positions of stability, of openness to one another, cooperation, avoiding tensions in the South China Sea, resolving disputes on the basis of the rule of law, the international legislation, the treaties that we have, and in order to safeguard the trade routes on which everybody depends. So that is a very important priority for us in the coming year, as it was last year. So I would mention those two topics. Second question from the colleague in Jakarta, I didn't catch your name, about our help for Indonesia under COVID. I think we will first of all pursue with the support for vaccination, both at the EU level and at the EU member state level. We will put the loans with the German Development Bank, KfW, develop the loans for the hospitals in these two provinces. Thirdly, we have the European Investment Bank active in Indonesia, and they have offered the government lending for vaccines. And the loans of the European Investment Bank are very competitive, very cheap, the lowest interests in the world. So that is on our agenda very much. Thirdly, we want to look ahead to a resumption of travel between Indonesia and the EU. Indonesia has the Peduli Lindungi app. Europe has its EU digital COVID certificate app and database. We want to link the two or make them interoperable somehow, simply for the benefit of travelers, avoiding that travelers have to travel with loads of papers and so on, and rather make sure that when you land here on Soekarno-Hatta Airport in Jakarta, that with your, thanks to the interface between the Indonesian and the European app, we can pass the border, do the medical check and vaccine check, and pass the border without any hassle. So those are a couple of the topics we will be working on with Indonesia.
Great, thank you, Ambassador. And now I would like to invite Yusuf Idrus from FPCI Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. So Idrus, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Kak Ray, for the opportunity. Good morning, Your Excellency Ambassador Vincent Piquet. I am Yusuf from FPCI Chapter Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. I would like to ask you one question regarding the recent issue that's happening in the European Union about Poland-Belarus border regarding refugee. How European Union responds to tackling these issues? Thank you.
Okay, Ambassador, you may answer the questions first. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Yusuf from Yogyakarta. Our response has been, first of all, political and utter condemnation of the Belarus leadership for this utterly cynical and inhumane way of using people for carrying out warfare against the EU and some EU member states. Unacceptable. Whatever, you know, whatever you think about the causes and the intentions, the means were utterly unacceptable. The second thing we did is we noticed that, of course, these poor people were lured, were tempted to fly to Belarus from Syria, from Afghanistan, from other, unstable circumstances, people living in poverty. They were flown by airlines coming from different countries, and what we decided to do is to threaten these airlines with sanctions unless they stopped cooperating with this, unwillingly or willingly, with this Belarus policy, and that has worked. It has led to the cessation of the flow of these unhappy people to Belarus, and the problem on the border is now solved. Now, the other question is the problem of the undemocratic tyranny in Belarus solved? No, it is not. Just yesterday or the day before, another opposition leader was sentenced to, if I recall well, 12 years in prison for saying for expressing his opinion, for his right, for exercising his right, his freedom to speak. Now that's unacceptable. Unacceptable in any circumstance, but certainly it's unacceptable for us to be witnessing that on the European continent, right next to our own European Union. So our policy goal will remain the same towards Belarus over the next year, maybe years. We are very firm on this, but also let me say that we are also very much ready to support Belarus in case we see a democratic change happen. And we have, I forget now exactly the amount, but there is money reserved, several billion euros reserved for a democratic Belarus to use for its economic development, its governments, its policy developments in energy and climate, agriculture, what have you. So our intentions are for the long run to help Belarus help Belarus into the European family, not only politically, but also in terms of economy and society.
Great, thank you, Ambassador. And now I would like to take two questions from the Zoom meeting. We have Adelina from FPCI UIN Jakarta. Thank you for the explanations, Your Excellencies. My name is Adelina from FPCI UIN Jakarta. What are your thoughts about EU policy regarding carbon border adjustment measures? How will this affect the relations between Indonesia and EU in the framework of Indonesia-EU SEPA? That is the first question. And the second questions, we have Triwardani from FPCI BINUS University from Jakarta. Good morning, Ambassador Vincent. I'm Triwardani from FPCI BINUS. In 2022, with the G20 hosting, how to make the outcome meaningful and also impactful for Indonesia? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. First, the question from Adelina in Jakarta. The carbon border adjustment mechanism of the European Union. It's a proposal. Let me first of all stress that. Proposal from the European Commission to the Member States and the European Parliament. It's a proposal, it's a scheme whereby we want to achieve that. Two things. First of all, that Europe will be investing a lot in standards for making our products green and clean. And we want to avoid, evidently, that European firms try to seek the easy way out by relocating production from the EU, high standards, to countries with low standards, so that they continue their dirty production elsewhere and then import products into the EU. And the mechanism will avoid such behavior by charging products on the European market that are placed on the European market with a certain fee to compensate for the carbon costing. So that is what it is about, and so avoid relocation of European production to countries with low standards and then get dirty imports into the EU, unfair competition with clean producers and so on, because dirty products tend to be cheaper. And secondly, also avoid that countries that don't have and don't put in place green standards in their economy have an unfair benefit on our market. Now, what does this mean for Indonesia? I don't think much, because in the first instance, the mechanism, if once adopted, would cover only a small number of products, 6 or 7, and only one of the products that we are considering including in the scheme affects Indonesia, and that is steel, because we have some steel imports from Indonesia into the EU. It's not much, 300 million euros, more or less, in the preceding years. And that's it. Other products are simply not traded between us at the moment. So we have to see how that works out. But let me tell you this, that for countries that have a decent policy for carbon costing, for putting a price on carbon, for such countries, there's nothing to worry about, because as I mentioned, the carbon border adjustment mechanism is meant to compensate for the different costs in production in green countries versus dirty products countries. So if Indonesia, as it will, puts in place a carbon costing mechanism, then the problem will be out of the world and will never materialize. So I'm fairly optimistic that for Indonesia, the benefit will be good. It will support the raising of carbon costing standards in your country. It will therefore thereby help green your economy, good for the climate, and good for the global market access of Indonesian products. I'm quite optimistic. We need to explain this, of course, as I'm trying to do, because there are misinterpretations occasionally. People who say this is just a protectionism and so on. Well, it isn't. The second question from the, I didn't catch the name very well, from the colleague from Binus University, a meaningful G20. Well, that's the challenge for any presidency. It was a challenge for Italy, and it is a challenge for Indonesia now. Italy did fantastic work on taxation, global taxation. Italy also did fantastic work on putting in place the global discussion about health and the global health architecture, as it is called. If I look at the objectives of Indonesia for its presidency, then I see a couple of very interesting and promising topics. First of all, the pursuit of the health, global health reform, and the ambition to try and develop with the other G20 partners system for creating more better resilience globally against a pandemic like we're having. And secondly, to have a scheme that makes it bridges the gap that we see currently between the richer countries and the poor countries. That, I think, is a very, very vital and important goal. The same, I think, on the climate, very ambitious goals for producing a global system for especially helping the poorer countries to finance their energy transition, the coal transition. It's got to happen in this country, in Europe, but also in Africa. So that, I think, is a very, very good and important initiative that hopefully we can help Indonesia realize.
Great, thank you, Ambassador. And now I'll be taking some questions from our YouTube channel. We have several questions here. The first, I'm going to take a question from Yesi Riana from Universitas Kristen Indonesia. So considering in 2015, Turkey also used similar strategy towards the EU, how do you think the EU could stop an actor from using migrants as hybrid weapon? So that is the first question. And second, we have Rujimin from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Jakarta. Many say that crisis in Libya is caused by miscalculation by some countries in the EU region. Libya now is much more dangerous compared to when Gaddafi was still in power. What's your take on that? And lastly, from Muhammad Aziz from Jakarta, as the champion of climate action, what is the best way that EU can do to help developing countries which are striving for development?
All right, thanks a lot. First question about weaponizing migrants and human beings. Yeah, I've described the response that the EU had for Belarus doing that. Political pressure on Belarus itself, but particularly also threatening sanctions to airlines that flew misguided persons, people who had been deluded into thinking that they could travel into Europe via Belarus, but been cheated, paid for a lot of money, paying each of them, threatening those airlines with sanctions, so not being allowed to enter the European airspace and so on, and that has helped. So similar things will be done in other cases where they to occur. More generally, of course, we have to recognize that the trade in human beings, the smuggling of human beings, is global business, is organized crime is behind it. It is something that has impacts or is impacting everybody to greater or lesser extent, but certainly it has impacted and is impacting the EU. It is impacting the UK and with France. So that is something on which we have to cooperate between our police forces, stamp out this smuggling, the international gangs smuggling people at horrendous human costs, killing people on the road who suffocate in containers, people who drown when they try to reach the Canary Islands of Spain from Morocco. These are horrible human tragedies, and who helps cause these tragedies? It's of course the smugglers. They thrive by such inhumane trade. Then the question from the colleague in Kamloops. First of all, I think we should ask the Libyan people what they think about this, and I would very much doubt if they would think that under Gaddafi they had a better time than living under a system democratically governed Libya as we're trying to build. So let's not stand in their feet, and the choice of the Libyan people is clear. They want to move ahead, and they want to get out of the conflict, the civil war situation they used to have. And they want to turn the very fragile peace accord into something lasting, something durable, and something that can bring back normalcy and stability and normal lives in this country. So I think that is our goal, and it is very much my sense that the Libyan people want exactly the same. The last question about striking the balance between development, economic growth, and climate. This is the big equation that all of us need to make. That goes for rich regions such as the EU as much as for anybody else. Because let me remind me, okay, we are a very, very highly developed region, the European Union, but we have transition needs as well. We have 18 coal regions, 18, concentrated in the Central European member states, but not exclusively there, also Germany. 18 coal regions that will face a massive transition. Coal is going to go out. So these regions have to do something. And that, of course, is a transition that has to be paid for somehow. And this is where the European Union budget, contributed by all the 27 members, comes in to help that coal transition happen. So transition, equating climate and development goals is an equation for us as well as for the developing world. But I totally agree if you suggest that for developing emerging economies, including Indonesia, this equation is more acute because the growth target, the growth trajectory that still needs to be gone through is longer. Or steeper, maybe not longer. So we have to do in Indonesia, more needs to happen in growing the economy and in greening the economy at the same time. Now, the good news is that a couple of things. First of all, it's possible to grow your economy and become cleaner. The technology is there, and the example of the EU shows that it can be done. In the past 4 decades, we grew our economy by 40%, 40, while cutting carbon by 33% already. So bigger economy with less greenhouse gases. Indonesia can do the same, thanks to technology, thanks to investment, and that's where we have to work, cooperate. I should say that, especially in the renewable energy sector, we need still the Indonesian lawmaker to do something, and that is to adopt and finalize the renewable energy law. That should give an equitable space for renewable energy compared to fossil electricity in this country. Now, at the moment, there is no level playing field between renewable and fossil. And if you want investment in renewable, you've got to make it attractive for investors to make that investment decision. And that's where we need the lawmaker of Indonesia to create that legal level playing field. There's also a presidential decree that is about this as well, about tariffs. So it can be done with investment, with know-how. The EU is ready to share know-how. We've had emissions trading for decades now. It's had its ups and downs. There were difficulties, teething problems and all of that, but without a doubt, it's been a very powerful tool for raising money to green your economy, and Indonesia can do the same. And we are helping, will be continuing to help, and to share our know-how. So development and climate reforms should go hand in hand, because of course we recognize, and our Vice President said it very clearly when he was here. He agreed with the President of Indonesia that, of course, climate ambitions and the climate drive in countries like Indonesia should go hand in hand with growing your economy, raising more people, further people out of poverty and bringing your economy to the high income status in 2045.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ambassador. Before we close this Q&A discussions, I have one more questions for you directly from me. So what would you describe in 3 words about 2021? And what are the 3 words that you hope for in 2022, Ambassador?
Oh, Ray. 3 words.
3 words, yes.
I 3 words. Like 2021, definitely COVID crisis, and response and solidarity. Not complete, but a good deal. I think those are the words I would use. COVID was on everybody's mind, wherever you were last year, here in Europe, in South America, in the US. For 2022, my G20 success, I think that is what I wish. Indonesia, the government, president, and with support from the EU. And I wish a definitive progress for the bilateral trade negotiations in this during the coming year.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ambassador. So with that, I'm sure everyone has so many questions, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, we have to cut it there. But thank you, Ambassador, for all of your answers, and thank you to all the participants who are tuning in for your questions. There was a very insightful discussions, and I believe that all of us here have learned a lot about the EU, the recap of 2021, and also what we can expect in 2022. But before we close today's Ambassador lecture, FPCI has some surprise. We have actually prepared a recap video of our own of 2021 EU Ambassador lecture. So please take a look at the following video.
Very good afternoon, everybody, and welcome
to our FPCI Ambassadorial Lecture
series with His Excellency Vincent Piquet, the Ambassador of the European Union to Indonesia.
Today, wealthier countries are vaccinating much faster than others. But the world will not overcome the pandemic if these differences stay. No one will be safe until everyone is safe.
The Indo-Pacific is a very important part of the world for us. It's the future, where the world center of gravity is moving, both in geoeconomic and geopolitical terms.
So in many respects, we have to treat disinformation as part of cyber warfare, as cyber combat.
Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was a recap video of 2021 EU Ambassadorial Lecture. Now, I would like to invite the founder and chairman of FPCI, Dr. Dino Patijalal, to deliver his closing remarks. Pak Dino, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Ray, and everybody who's joining us. And Vincent, it's been really great for FPCI to work with you. I think, actually not I think, I know EU is the only diplomatic office in Jakarta who is doing this monthly talk with students from all over Indonesia. Every lecture has been exceptional. And I think it was very smart for you to do so because, during the pandemic, it's really hard to get anybody these days. The pandemic is forcing us to go digital. And I think somehow that has become a blessing in disguise because we can actually reach more people in more places. As you can see, students who joined the discussions have come from, all parts of Indonesia, and normally they would not see you offline, physically. So, thank you very much for doing this program with FPCI, and I should tell everybody that FPCI does a lot of things, and we do a lot of things that other people say are impossible to do or difficult to do, but the EU has always worked with us and believe in what we do, and I think that's very special. Last November we held the global town hall, and we had 12,000 people from 122 countries. And only 4,000 out of that 12,000 came from Indonesia, and the rest are coming in hundreds from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, India, Brazil, Argentina, and so on. The EU worked with us very closely to make that program a reality. And even the president of European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, also spoke, which really demonstrates the EU strong attention to our efforts. So Vincent, thank you so much on behalf of all the students, and I want to congratulate you because under your leadership, the EU delegation in Jakarta has been really very, very active in showing your flag and in building cooperation with our people. And we hope every success for the EU delegation in Indonesia, and I know everyone would like to stay in touch with you, with the EU delegation. So, and then also thank you to Ray, who is always moderating our events, to Afni also, and Cindy, and Wahyu, and all the FPCI staffs who have been managing this EU lecture series. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a nice holiday, and stay safe for everyone.
Thank you, Pak Dino.
Thanks.
Yes.
Can I just, I'd love to reply by thanking likewise, by thanking likewise Pak Dino for these very kind words, and thank the entire FPCI team, Ray, Esther, Afni, Cindy, Willie, and others. We counted in the past year 10 activities, of which 6 were the lectures, 12, 13, 30. So fantastic, and the global town hall is something unique. I find that Pak Dino has initiated here, and with our support. So thanks very much for that cooperation, and we will definitely pursue the partnership with you, with FPCI, in the coming year. I look forward to that very much, and I wish everybody a very Merry Christmas who celebrate it, and also a very Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Piquet. It really is a pleasure for FPCI to conduct the Ambassador Lecture throughout 2021. We hope that you enjoyed all the discussions as much as we did. So thank you so much, Ambassador. And now I would like to invite all the participants here on the Zoom meeting to turn on your camera, as we will have a virtual group photo shoots for the Ambassador Lecture. So please, everyone, turn on your camera for a brief moment, as we will be taking a screenshot and a virtual group photo shoots. Okay. We're still waiting for everyone to please turn on your camera, and my colleagues Afni will take the screenshot. Okay. Wait. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, one more. Please give us your best smiles. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, maybe one more, a little bit freestyle, perhaps. Okay. So in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we have come to the end of our Ambassador Lecture today. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And on behalf of FPCI and all the audience here today, I would like to extend our gratitude to you, and also to the delegations of the European Union to Indonesia, and also Ibu Teoria, who we have worked closely, who made this Ambassador Lecture series happen. And also to all the students and all the participants who have joined us today. Thank you, everyone, for your delightful and also thought-provoking questions. We hope to see you again in 2022. See you.
Terima kasih banyak.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Ambassador.
Talk to
Bye.
you. Bye, everybody. No news, fun.